Lately, I've been trying to make my images a lot more cinematic and focus more heavily on story. So I thought it'd be a good idea to talk about what I've learned from studying cinema and how we can approach composition in a more decisive manner. This video is going to focus a bit more on the theory, but if you want to watch the real-time footage of this, you can do so by heading over to my Patreon at patreon.com/moderndayjames. So we're going to break down these shots into 4 different components, and I have these arranged based on the questions that I'm going to ask myself as I look at the images. The first thing we want to know is, what is the shot type? Where is the camera placed? And how is it angled? Next, we're going to take a look at our shapes. How are they arranged? What types of shapes are being used? And how big or small are they? After that, we'll look at the director's usage of light and dark. How are these elements illuminated? Are the lights favored, or are the shadows prioritized? And lastly, we'll take a look at the intent of the image. Does it convey the appropriate mood? Is there some underlying symbolism that makes it even more badass? Okay, let's jump in with our shot types. Your shot choice is going to depend entirely upon what you're trying to convey. So in our extreme wide, we're trying to show a vast expanse. Maybe your characters are on a massive journey, think Lord of the Rings, and you want to demonstrate to the viewer this incredible distance that they have to travel to accomplish their journey. The wide shot is similar in that you're showing a lot of the environment. However, now we'll be a little bit closer, and our characters will take up a little bit more of the screen. Wide shots are really good for giving the viewer a sense of space and the location, and they're often used for establishing shots. So you can imagine if your characters are transitioning to a different location, you would start with a wide shot like this to sort of give the viewer the sense of where they are. The medium shot is going to be a full body shot of the character. These shots are really useful for showing choreography. So if your character is performing some sort of dramatic action, say a fight scene, this will give the viewer the full scope of the movement. The medium close is going to be similar to that, except it's not going to include the entirety of the body, and it shows a little bit more of the character's emotion. I find that this is a good healthy balance between showing some choreography and a little bit more of the character's feelings about it simultaneously. And if you haven't guessed already, close-ups are the shots we use when we only want to convey emotion. These are great shots to use when there's some sort of emotional change or dramatic moment. And the extreme close-up is just when you turn it all the way to 11 and you just get right up in the character's face. And as you can see from the example there, it's super dramatic, really good for building a lot of tension. In addition to changing the camera's distance, we can also affect the scene by changing how high or low we place our camera. Having a low camera looking up creates a sense of power, which makes sense because it has this feeling that the character is towering over you. So if you have a scene where one character is overpowering another, it's a good idea to frame the more powerful character from a low angle. Having the camera at eye level creates a sense of balance and that we are on equal terms with the character that we're viewing. This might be a shot you'd want to use if there's some sort of conversation where both parties are on equal playing fields. And unsurprisingly, if we elevate our camera and we look down on a character, that conveys a sense of weakness and makes it feel as though the character is being overpowered. So already, just with where we're positioning our camera, we've accomplished a lot of intention in our shots. Let's take this one step further and start breaking down the shapes of compositions. I think it's really important when you're trying to learn how to compose images to try to think about it as flat two-dimensional shapes. If you start to think about perspective too early, I feel like this takes away a lot from creating the emotional impact that you're trying to create. So while a lot of the videos on this channel really focus on perspective, I want you to suspend that part of your brain for right now. A great way to create a very dynamic composition is by having a variety in the size of your shapes. You'll notice in this first column that there's a big difference between the size of the foreground character versus the background character. And it's a pretty easy way to create depth without having to think too much about perspective. Just make the character that's in front very big compared to the character that's behind. And be sure to experiment with this. Maybe some of the elements are so close to the camera that they appear really big and don't even fit on the screen. The next thing to talk about is balance in our compositions. Balance refers to the distribution of shapes around a canvas. If you imagine your canvas as a scale, you can shift the balance towards one side or the other based on where you distribute the weight. This is why the intention of the scene is so important. If you want it to feel very balanced and orderly, you can evenly distribute your elements of the scene. But if you're trying to create a sense of chaos or energy, you can throw that balance off. One of the ways you can achieve this is by shifting all the elements towards one side of the canvas. The more you push things towards the edge of a canvas, the more tension and the less balanced your composition will feel. Tilting the camera has a similar effect where now everything is going to feel on edge and it will really feel unbalanced. It subconsciously tells the viewer that shit is about to go down. The quality of shapes in our composition is also going to affect the mood. Just like when we're designing characters, the same square, circle, triangle dynamic plays out in compositions. Meaning, if you want something to feel happy and pleasant, you can use circular shapes. Square shapes will convey solidity and strength, and triangular shapes will convey danger and make things feel threatening. This doesn't necessarily mean that if you want something to feel triangular or threatening, that you have to have your characters placed in triangular rooms wearing triangular outfits. You could use light and dark to create those shapes. Maybe a character's in a dark room, but a small triangle of light is hitting the corner of their face. And speaking of lighting, that's one of the main tools we as image creators have to create the mood and readability of an image. Readability is incredibly important when working in animation or movies because you have such a short amount of time to convey an image. If the viewer can't tell what's going on in just a couple of seconds or at thumbnail size, then it's not going to translate well when somebody's watching this in sequence. A strong graphic read makes the composition easy to understand even at a small size. The way I try to accomplish this is by favoring either the lights or the darks. This means if I have a light background, my subject will be in shadow, and vice versa. If I have a dark background, then my subject will be in light. This makes the silhouette of the subject just pop out. But lighting isn't used just for readability alone, it's also the main component in setting the mood of a scene. I'll be doing an entire video on how lighting creates mood next, so we'll just touch on this briefly here. Dark scenes with harsh pops of light feel intense and dramatic, whereas flatly lit scenes feel calm and safer. You could turn a scene from a children's movie to a monster horror just by changing how you light the subject. Think of any time you've ever watched a scary movie and the big evil monster is revealed and all of a sudden you're no longer scared. And this makes sense because we're generally afraid of the unknown, so by revealing that you end up ruining the mystery and making it less scary. So we can use this concept to our advantage. Scenes that are dark and obscure the figure with just small glints of light will create an uneasy feeling in the viewer. The next level of composing scenes is when you can start to introduce symbolism directly into the scene itself. When a composition is done to full effect, it combines all of the elements we've discussed so far to convey the story, even in absence of dialogue or context. One of my favorite images is from this scene in 300. When we view it in grayscale, we can see that the woman on the left is well illuminated, but the figure on the right is shrouded in darkness. Placing this obstruction between the two characters immediately creates this visual wedge in their relationship. These two characters are at odds with each other, and there is a literal obstacle between them. The greater message here is a conflict between good and evil, light versus dark, and it's all established subconsciously in the viewer's mind. Here's another scene I love from 300. In this image, we see that our focal character is very close to camera, with the figures of his troupe behind him. They're all facing in the same direction, so you immediately know that they're aligned and working together. The interesting part to me here is that they create a direct line to his brain. Their lives are literally on his shoulders, and that's weighing on his mind. I haven't watched the movie in a while, but I get the sense that he feels responsibility for their lives. This level of analysis might seem a little bit like playing 4D chess, but I think it's super cool when directors add this level of depth to a scene, and it makes you want to watch the movie over and over again. Alright everybody, that's about it for this video. I'll be doing another video on lighting as I mentioned earlier, and that should be out in a couple weeks or so. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to subscribe with notifications on. I live stream most weekdays at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so you really want to have those notifications on. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.